Welcome, Azra, to the Sacred Roots podcast. I am so grateful that you accepted my invitation to begin with. And I am very much looking forward to having this conversation with you. So I'm giving you the mic to introduce yourself to our listeners who are wondering who you are and what you do.
Thank you, Elaine. I'm honored to be on your podcast. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Azra Bertrand. I'm founder of Biomancy University. I am a co-author with my wife, Saren, of two award-winning books, The Magdalene Mysteries and Womb Awakening. And currently I teach students at Biomancy University about how to practices and techniques and frameworks of how to work with the very real magic in our body and in the ecosystem, so that the quantum and energetic realities.
Yes, and I have done their Biomancy course, so I highly recommend to anyone to join their. I think you do every equinox and summer solstice a free webinar and then invite people to join your programs. And it was really, really potent for me to help me reconnect with my own biodelic, the magic of my body and the magic of nature and the magic of time as well, which is what we're going to talk about today. So we live in a world where we just run so much after time. And I'm sure you have that experience sometimes as well, Azra, as you try to be a great father, a business owner, and be the mystic that you are. How are you juggling time in your life?
Right. So great question. And the way I work with time is to drop right into what I call organic time or Gaian time or bio time. And so everybody who has a relationship to time and who's worked with it in their own life understands that time can dilate and time can contract. And our state, if we're in a state of disconnection, if we're in a state of tension, if we're panicking and worried, then we start to kind of get disconnected really from that organic time. But when we go outside, when we greet the sunrise, perhaps when we go outside again in the evening, watch the sun go down, when we drop into organic rhythms, the rhythms of the sun, the rhythms of the moon, the rhythms of our body, when we open our eyes and our mind to the reality that every single one of our 50 trillion cells has a biological clock that's keeping our bio time, our organic time, and when we start to connect to that, then I feel like personally, I feel this deeper sense of ease, of coherence. It's a sense of feeling less stressed and in more just in the flow, really, And so rather than time as this construct or constraint that we're trying to to work into this crazy man-made schedule, a real palpable feeling of this expansive, beautiful time. So that's the ideal, right? Of course, it's a practice
A journey.
of staying in that state, because everything tries to throw challenges at that. But that's how I relate to it.
So the way I understand what you call organic time, Gaian time, it's really our natural rhythms, the time that the body naturally moves through, connecting with the sunrise and the sunset is a way in coming back to that. I guess it's also connected to our circadian rhythm, and maybe finding that sometimes we want to slow down in the afternoon before energy can come back up, and then time can speed back up as well. Is that it, or am I missing something?
That's absolutely it, right? So we are creatures of rhythm in our psyche, in our spirit, in our body. We are rhythmic beings, and the most fundamental rhythm that all of our cells orient to, that our spirit and our bodies orient to, is this rhythm of light and dark, of the sun and the darkness. So it's not just the sunlight, but the darkness that's a part of this. And being in that rhythm, we actually have two different biologies. We have a daytime biology and a very different nighttime biology. we have completely different hormones, or they're functioning in different ways in the night, in the day. So melatonin is the governess, actually the master hormone, or the mistress hormone, I sometimes
Yeah.
say. Of all of our other hormones, it's active at night when it's dark. And whereas during the day, we have more dopamine, more serotonin, we have different neural circuitry. Our immune system is doing very different things in the night, in the day, our and on, right? So at the very heart of who we are, we're rhythmic. And so that's one of the primary rhythms. And like you said, it's when we're in rhythm with that, when we're in coherence with that. And from a science point, it's called circadian coherence. And it means that all of our systems are firing together in the way they're meant to be. And that's one piece, right? So that's one rhythm. They're the greater rhythms. There's the rhythm of the moon, which lasts over the course of 29 days. There are the rhythms of the seasons. And there's the rhythms of, and on, these greater rites of passage in our lifetime. And so my connection to time is really about a connection to these rhythms, and they're natural rhythms, whether they're natural in our biology or natural in the cosmos. And being in that relationship is, as you know, right, as you've experienced, it's a palpable, different feeling when you're in that connection, when you're in that rhythmic flow, as when you're out of rhythm.
Yeah.
And that's, which can be jarring.
I feel like it's about, this is going to sound like very conceptual, but maybe I'm going to try to explain myself. It's almost about letting time support us in the way that if we allow ourselves to be in that organic time, we are more in flow, there is more ease, and we can also step into that dimension where we're in the zone and the time goes by really, really fast and we get to create a lot. And I feel like that's also a key to connect with our soul, a key to connect with our gifts. Whereas, like you said, if we are in that man-made time and we try to control time and we try to cram as much as possible into time to achieve, quote unquote, then we actually come out of alignment, out of time, and we create stress and disease eventually for ourselves. Can you speak a little bit more about that relationship between time and our soul, our purpose, our gifts?
Yeah, sure. So one of the amazing things is to understand that what you're describing is described in quantum physics as well. And so when we, in quantum physics, right, when we come near something that has a lot of energy or a lot of mass, this is a metaphor, right? So something and that actually dilates time. It slows time down. We have more room to navigate and work, and in that space there is a richness of experience. There's a richness of creativity. We're not putting pressure on time. We're opening and being playful in a way with time. This is how children experience time.
Mm-hmm.
And in the studies of time perception, in the first 7 years of our life, the amount of time, it feels like, if you look at how we perceive that,
I
it's an
remember.
enormity. It's an enormity of time and years. And then the next, whatever, 70, 100 years, whatever it is, of a person's life, it relatively goes by quickly, just
Yeah.
because our ability to drop in and open and perceive at time in this expansive, creative, playful way as a child is innate and natural. And as adults, we have to consciously cultivate that to drop back in. And then
Mm-hmm.
time can expand. It becomes regenerative. Another way of talking about this is being in regenerative time versus degenerative time.
Mm-hmm.
And I use different words, but the main metaphor we're working with is when you're in organic and natural process. It's like a plant grows in its own time, a tree grows in its own time. It's not something that you do from 9 to 5 a.m. on a schedule to be productive. And that man-made idea of productivity, it's the machine consciousness. And it's one of the biggest diseases on the planet. And it's
Yeah.
directly degenerates our human biology and the Earth's biology when we're as a collective in that state of consciousness, because it's
Mhm.
disconnected.
Mhm. Mhm. So interesting, and I feel like our children are such great teachers to help us come back to that quality of time that we connect with through presence
Mm.
and being fully there. Um, you said in the course something also about time being often represented by, well, time being feminine to begin with. It's a dark womb, it's an incubator, it's what allows for transformation, rebirth, which is deeply feminine. And that she was known under the name of Kali and Saturn.
Mm.
Can you speak a little bit more about that and how the ancients related to Saturn, Lady
Yeah.
Saturn?
Yes, right. And so time is one of the greatest mysteries. So we'll start with that.
Yeah.
And you get people like Albert Einstein, as he was helping with some of these other scientists, Niels Bohr and other people, to develop relativity, to develop the quantum mechanics, the basis and the foundation of some of the quantum realms. What they began to understand is, well, many things. One is that we can go forward in time and backward in time. So we can move fluidly in time as well as in three dimensions. So time becomes something not what it seems. There's a greater mystery happening. And beyond that, in true quantum events, there's a kind of timelessness, or a kind of way that time expands and becomes something very mysterious and becomes a tunnel to different kinds of dimensions of experience. So you can have time traveling, you can have wormholes in time, you can have, and these are notions in quantum physics, but they are real experienced events for us as humans at the imaginal or psychic or dreaming level. And beyond that, there are structures in, you can call them deities or gods, Kali, Kronos in the ancient Greek tradition, Saturn, Roman name, um, that are about these different layers and structures of time. Now, I'm going to take a step back to say something about our biology, our amazing, beautiful, miraculous biology that most people don't understand. Is that in our brain, in the middle of our brain, we have a pineal gland. Now, most people have heard of the pineal gland, and the pineal gland is it, it receives light, so it receives the sunlight, and in receiving that light, it's a vestigial eye. It used to be a third eye on the top of our head from an evolutionary perspective, but it holds the power to connect with light to locate us in time. And there's a little part of our brain right above that called the suprachiasmatic nucleus that is a quantum time supercomputer within
Mm.
our brain. And what it's doing is the same thing. So if you've ever studied or heard of Mayan astronomy or ancient Egyptian astronomy or Vedic astronomy, where they could calculate cycles of time that were huge, 26,000 year eras,
Mhm.
100 plus thousand year eras. Our brain is doing that. And our
Mm.
suprachiasmatic nucleus instantly, based on light, and not just sunlight, but darkness and moon, and locating us and these structures of time. And they have been spoken about as deities and gods and divinities, because when we're relating at these deeper, these greater levels, at these astronomical and astrologic levels, when we start to measure time not just by sunlight, but by bringing in the movement of the planets. So obviously Saturn, 28-year cycle that corresponds with huge rites of passage and initiation in our human
Mm-hmm.
biology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so at age 28, then our Saturn returns, our prefrontal cortex is part of our brain, which is so key in our conscious creativity, is finally reaching maturity for most people. And it directly coincides with Saturn's return,
Yeah.
for example. And this is just the beginning. It's, we could go on. I'll say one other thing and then I'll take a step back and we can dive further into that.
Yeah.
But when we're thinking about what we're going to create in our life, when we're thinking about structures and infrastructures, templates of creation, whatever that may be, for a child, for a project, for how the world that we're dreaming into being. When we start working at that level, we're automatically working with time, and not just time in the way that science thinks about time, but timelines,
Yeah.
possibilities, realities. We can jump and move and shift realities in this quantum leap kind of way. So we start talking about time, we also need to start talking about timelines
Mm-hmm.
and what does that mean, and our destiny.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I wanted to go. So you've read my mind, Azra. Because a lot of the women that listen to this podcast are spiritual women entrepreneurs, healers, coaches. So they want to serve, but they also, of course, want to be paid for their services to be able to keep serving. Otherwise, we do have to go back to that 9 to 5, right? And so I feel like there's a lot of talk as well in that spiritual community of timelines. Like, how can I jump timeline, be in a timeline where I serve, where I'm in alignment with my purpose, where I use my gifts to help others, and where I can also live in abundance in exchange of that. And so I would love for us to dive more into these timelines. And the way I understand it is that it's deeply connected to our embodiment. And I remember in the course you said embodiment means located in time and space.
Yes,
So we can play with time through our embodiment, through who we are being, right?
absolutely. Yes. And so timelines for me start to directly get into this idea of individuation and how I think about individuation from a perspective of biomancy and our soul's evolutionary journey. And so we begin life in our family system. Our energy body, when we're a baby, our energy body is identical to the energy body of our caregivers. We are an emerged energy field. And then, of course, as we grow up, as we adult, we begin to individuate into our destiny, which may be something that's very different from where our family of origins energy system is. In my case, certainly, but I would say for everyone, for
It
many
often is,
people.
yeah.
And maybe the degree of how far you're traveling from that system may differ for different people, depending on what everyone is here to do. Everyone has a different mission. But that process of individuation is another way of thinking about that. And when I say individuation, I don't mean becoming this like autonomous individual that's separated from everything else. I mean something much more beautiful than that. I mean becoming interwoven into all of life, so that our weaving is not just in our family system, but into the ecosystem, into the cosmos. Then we become a true symbiotic self, and that's our adulting and our individuation, right? And another way of thinking about that process, or praying into that process, or dreaming into that process, it's opening and stepping into our true timeline, the timeline of our destiny, which is going to be different than the timeline that our parents have in mind for us.
Mm-hmm.
They have one dream for us, but we began to dream our own dream. and that means jumping timelines for
Mhm.
most people, letting go of some of the old templates, some of the old patterns, some of the old ways of thinking about the world that don't serve us, that we've outgrown, and opening into this emerging timeline of destiny. And I, the Gnostic traditions and the early mystical traditions that were connected to the mystery schools, they talked about this as our telos, our destiny, this force
Mm,
that's calling us into our into what we're really meant to be and do.
I love that. I recently saw an interview from Bashar. Do you know who Bashar is?
I'm
Yeah.
familiar with Bashar, yeah.
Yes. So it's this American person who is channeling an ET called Bashar, who's giving a lot of wisdom and teachings. And he was explaining, if I am able to revoice it, explain it correctly, that there was a deep relationship between timelines, time, and parallel universes, and that actually all
Mm,
we had was here and now, and
mm,
that every second was actually like a parallel universe.
mm,
But it's just that it's moving really, really fast. Like all the images that we would have on an ancient, tape that would then turn into a movie. We have all these static images that actually become a movement, that become a movie.
mm.
That time and our life is actually the same, and that we are then constantly actually timeline jumping, stepping into parallel universes, because all we have really is now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
How does that relate to, like, what is that
Right,
bringing up for you?
right. There is a being in that now moment is it's a different perception of time than being in a logical planning strategic, you know. I much prefer to be in that now moment. I think everybody does. It's Bashar, if in this context, what you're saying sounds to me of a flow state. I
Hmm.
know, the no mind state where you're experiencing, you're sensing, you're perceiving, you're in your body, you're in your feelings, you're in your perception rather than that analytical mind. And I think that's beautiful. And I also I also love to think about the alchemical power of transformation with respect to time and timelines, and this idea that there are many different versions of us that are possible depending on what we choose and what we focus on,
Hmm.
and that we have the ability to choose and jump and leap into new states of being,
Hmm.
and just new frequency fields, and how that is so deeply connected to time. We're talking about timelines and at this moment. And I, it's there are moments where we are asked directly to do this. And I think of these as rites of passage in a process of spiritual development, or in a process, you can think of it as a process of business development, who you are as a business person, because I think there is a profound spiritual evolutionary process that comes by consciously relating to being good at business.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's so much to be said for that, and
Yeah.
making things grounded, rooted, real, manifesting. And my point is that there are leaps that we make. I think everybody understands that, and when we do make those leaps, everything in our life starts to change. And what I teach and share about is, it really, you can think of it as a path of practice, or tools or techniques to assist that. And a key one is ceremony, is rite of passage, is working with the symbolic, because these are shifts in energy. It's not about what we're doing, it's about energy that we're holding, and how powerful that is. But yes, I love to think about this, what we're letting go,
Yeah.
what's emerging.
So the way to jump timelines
Mm,
and to step into a quantum leap, it's through frequency changes through shift, through embodiment that we can do in ceremonies, for example.
Mm, absolutely.
Can you tell us a story or an experience that you remember where you feel you've jumped timelines, you've quantum leaped?
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to go back. There have been many, right? So, not just one person in our lifetime. There's some
Mhm.
essence that's the same, I think, but there are moments of transformation and choice. And I'll say that I relate to these leaps. It's like there is a past thread that we are letting go of, agreeing to let go of, a new template, an emerging template that we're opening with our heart to step into. And then there's everything that's around that, which I think of as a womb field, or a field of prayer, or a field of magic, or blessing. These are the energies that hold us in life. And so when we're talking about making these leaps, for me, it's always connected to prayer, and
Mm.
it's always connected to magic. And I view life as circles within circles, or wombs that hold us and support us within wombs, like nested wombs, and
Mm. Yeah.
we're connected to the books that we've written.
Yeah.
And it's the way indigenous and elder cosmologies have viewed this. And how do we move from one womb that holds us into the next?
Mm.
It's not a process of judgment. It's not like one's bad or wrong and the next is good. It's just a movement of the heart and desire. How do we move from one womb that's holding us to the next? Because it can
Mhm.
be anxiety provoking. And I'll share a moment in my own life. And it was a moment of pilgrimage to a Black Madonna cathedral in a small medieval village in France called Puy-en-Velay. And it's a beautiful Gothic cathedral there. And I was drawn to go there on pilgrimage. And it was a strong calling in my heart. I didn't know what exactly was waiting for me there. I'd never gone on a pilgrimage to a Black Madonna pilgrimage before, but I just went solo, just me. And I went into this amazing cathedral there. I mean, there's so much magic there. One of the things that's special about that cathedral is there is a 5,000-year-old dolmen, a sacred stone. That's the roof stone on the where there's two posts and a roof stone from 5,000 years ago. Was a megalithic pilgrimage site that people from that area had been journeying to for thousands of years, and they kept that stone in the Christian church, or local people would come and still touch and pray on,
Mm.
which is one of the special pieces. But I came there on pilgrimage to connect with divine mother energy, divine feminine energy, which for me was going to be pivotal in the work that I now do and would come to do. And so I sat in front of this beautiful black Madonna, Black Mother, and opened my heart, closed my eyes, and prayed. And I prayed for wisdom, I prayed for guidance, I prayed for clarity on my path, I prayed for all these things. And I opened to that quantum womb field, that greater field. And I felt the energy come in. I started crying and crying and crying. I cried so much, and I went there every day for about a week, something like that. That the cleaning staff in the cathedral recognized me, and they would get all their mops out so they could, like, like mop up my tears, and like little trash bags. I throw my tissues in them, um, and on the other side of that, I had a very clear idea that an understanding. It wasn't an idea, it was an embodied knowing that what I was here to do was to help support the reemergence of our human connection to the earth and what we call the feminine or yin energies for our own personal healing and the healing of the planet. And how my journey started in medical schools. I worked at the National Institutes of Health as a research scientist in early mother-child attachment, and how that took on a new spiritual depth. And for me, that depth was connected to the sacred feminine energies that are important for every man, woman, child, everyone. We're all born from that, everyone
Mhm.
on this planet. in a
Somehow
very
you've studied the physical attachment to the biological mother, and then now
that's right.
you're reconnecting us to the earth mother.
Exactly. But it's they're mirrors, they're fractals,
Mhm.
it's a holographic continuity that exists in our biology, exists in spirit. And exactly. For me, it's just so beautiful.
I love that. Thank you for sharing this story. And I feel like I have also very deep experiences where just like tears come through, and I call them tears of truth. It's when we reconnect with our essence, with our truth, and it's so potent when I have these. You said something at the beginning of like, how can we step from one womb to another, one cycle to another cycle in the big cycle of life? And I feel like prayer definitely is key in connecting with these tears of truth. And I see many people get stuck in the process of letting go and not understanding that in order to step into the new womb, well, we first need to let go of the first one. Right. And so many people are afraid of letting go of what they have because what's coming next? I don't know. Right. So it's stepping into that unknown, stepping into that the time that can be dark. That's why I love that you present time as feminine, because it is a dark womb. We don't always see, we are in that unknown, but it is supporting us, it is holding us. So what would you say to people who are struggling to let go and to move from one womb to the other?
Right, right. There's a science to this. It's an art and a science. And
Hmm.
when we're struggling to let go of something, it's usually because there's strong emotions
Hmm.
that are still binding us. There are hidden loyalties or hidden contracts that we have. There are things that we feel obliged to stay in connection with for one reason or another.
Mm.
When we allow ourselves to grieve those old connections, it helps to loosen the energy. If we still have anger, if we still have a lot of emotional charge around an old state of being, it actually glues us in. And so we have to acknowledge that. We have to be very real about where those connections are there, where those cords of attachment. It's only and so there's an emotional cleansing process
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
is so supportive. Grief work, in just consciously exploring our feelings and the hidden beliefs we have that we may not have spoken out loud, and
Yeah.
speaking them out, writing them in a journal, speaking them out loud to spirit. I do a lot with the folks I work with. I do a lot of what I call spirit conversations, where
Yeah.
we're speaking aloud, having this conversation with spirit and saying what the truth is for us, even if it's uncomfortable, even if, even
Yeah.
if it makes us feel young or weak or and so when we move those energies, those ties begin to let go of, and we begin to let go of those ties, and
Yeah.
a new future becomes possible. We can move toward that emerging future with our heart and our desire. We're not of two minds anymore.
Yeah. And this brings me to my next question, which is something that you were teaching in the course and explaining how trauma keeps us in a time loop. So it's this idea that this emotional baggage keeps us in that womb, in that cycle, in that time loop, and prevents us from moving forward. Can you explain a little bit more why that is?
Yeah, sure. So for me, I've been working with trauma and studying trauma for 30 years, and as professionally, and also on my own healing journey with trauma, of course, as
Mhm.
all of us are,
Yeah.
or many of us are. And what I've come to understand is a very simple definition of trauma is being stuck in a past timeline,
Mm.
when our biology, when our body, when our neurology is stuck in an old time because it was shocking and we haven't allowed ourselves to catch up and be in the present moment. And so our mind may be spinning around the events that happened 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Our biology is still spinning around those same events because trauma is happening in our body, in our cells,
Yeah.
in our neurology as well. And so when you understand that a trauma is being stuck in time, then we began to understand that to heal trauma, we have to work with time. If we're not thinking and working with time consciously, it's very hard to dislodge those traumas, as a lot of people can relate to. You can feel the feelings, you can talk about it, you can process it, you can loop around in it again and again and again. But until we shift our relationship to time, until we anchor ourselves and connect ourselves into natural time, the same thing that we were speaking about earlier, getting more and more connected into organic time, biotime, all of these things are so supportive for us. Then that forms that container, that womb, that safety, that nervous system regulation, whatever your language is, to allow you to move into a different experience.
Yeah.
And again, there's an art to this.
Yeah.
It's an art of memory. It's an art of working with natural cycles. It's the art of working with the subtle energies, the quantum energies, because that's what we're dealing with. It's responsive to those, to those kind of energies.
And if time is malleable and can sometimes go fast and quick, and we can come back to organic time, what is your understanding then of divine timing?
Right. And so I think of this as a magical dance with life, and there's a moment for everything. There's a moment where a certain action is in the flow. There's a moment where we're meant to be active and do things and create. There are other moments where we're meant to be receptive, perceive, not necessarily be doing so much. And sensing those movements is an art and a gift. And that's what I think of with divine timing, as there's always a season for everything. And if we're quiet, if we listen, if we reflect, we can tune into that. Now, historically, in a spiritual context, this is the entire basis of the I Ching and a lot of Taoist spiritual philosophy and practice. So for those of you who are listening, who are familiar with the I Ching, you'll see it's all about, when do you do this? When do you do that? When do you make those alliances? When do you recognize you're dealing with a really intense power and you need to step back and be humble about that, or you'll get spun and flipped. When is it a time to create? When is it and be in a yang energy? When is it a time to be in the yin energy and receive, regenerate, and dream? And so there is an amazing divine cosmic flow. And the more we're connected, we can feel that and move accordingly. It's definitely it's not a logical place. It's a flow place.
I love that. And I feel like the seasons are constantly trying to teach us when to do what, and the moon and the sun. And when we can tap into that organic time, then we come back to that flow.
Yes. Can I say, is that they're one and the same. Divine timing and organic timing and cosmic timing, and it's the same. There's the divine is so interwoven throughout the cycles of time in our body and the planets and the sun. There's no separation.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. It's I can feel that in my cells. We often speak about, the universe, the unseen, the goddess supporting us, and often working at the 11th hour. And the way I see it, it's like waiting for the sun to rise. It's like you're waiting the whole night, but the sun was always meant to rise at 6:30 a.m. So you can feel like, oh my God, it's finally coming when the day is supposed to begin. But it's like, well, yeah, because that's when the sun rises. And we feel like it's the 11th hour, but it was moving all along. It was happening. It was preparing itself to rise. From our perspective, it's we finally see it, but it was moving the whole night when we were sleeping or waiting. What do you say, or what would you say to people who can feel stuck in not seeing that things are happening, not knowing if they have jumped timeline, and waiting for that 11th hour for something to happen?
Right. Yes. And so what I've come to experience in my own life is that I have a sense, if I'm tuned in, I have a sense, am I doing what needs to be done right now? There's a feeling. Am I leaning into this in the way I need to lean into this? So I'm in a yoga metaphor, right? There's a stretch that we're doing. There's a new position or an asana that we're in. You're leaning into it, and there's just the right lean. If you go too much, if you try to strive too hard and push too hard, you'll hurt yourself. But then if you're doing nothing, if there's no edge, if there's no growth edge that you're leaning into, you'll stagnate. And so there's this edge that we're leaning into. And you you can learn to know that feeling when you're at that edge. And what I found is that when I can feel that, I know that results will come eventually. And then it's an act of patience, you know.
Yeah.
It's because you may have to just do that thing over and over and get these incremental movements, and sometimes you go forward a little bit and backwards a little bit. But I've come to recognize that if I'm in the flow, even if it feels hard, even if I don't see immediate benefits, I know I'm in the right place. And on the surface, it can look identical to when you're not in the flow and you're just spinning your wheels and wasting your time. The difference is a difference in feeling.
Doesn't know it.
And and what I know is that when where's that feeling like I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing, even if all the world disagrees, even if my family disagrees, even my parents and friends, but if I know that's it, and I have that faith, life will respond with 100% certainty that when the time is right, there is no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And so the art becomes discerning that, or am I doing what I need to be doing based on this feeling? Is it lining up with my deep desire? Is it lining up with my soul's evolutionary journey? It's not always a question of does it feel good, because it doesn't always feel good. It could feel
Yeah.
scary. It can feel
Yeah.
challenging. It can feel, and in
Most
fact,
time it does.
yeah, you know that if it does, you're probably on the right track. If
Yeah, exactly.
it's way too comfortable and easy, it's probably not your developmental edge.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we could speak about this for 3 more hours, Azra, but I want to honor your time. And I do have a final question with you, because you said earlier something about how we can ground our businesses into organic time and use that to help us create and manifest what we desire. Because we have a
Mm.
lot of spiritual entrepreneurs that are listening to the podcast. What is one or two practical tip that you could give them to really harness time in their favor and really ground their business into the energy of the earth that is always wanting to support us?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question, and I I've thought so much about how to ground our biology, our spirit into organic time, and I feel it's the same with our business. It's just an extension of ourselves, our love, our passion, our devotion, our service, as well as how we receive nourishment, because our business is both a giving and a
A
channel
receiving.
for that receiving. And our relationship to timing in the business is the same as our relationship to timing in everything else. There's a way that our mind can say, well, I need to be doing this. I need to be optimizing my search engine. I need to be doing this messaging. I need to be doing the, like creating this content or this product. I need to be answering my customers' emails. I need to, whatever, more things than a human can possibly do at any one time. There's an infinite amount of things. And so there's a way of pulling back and having a spaciousness around our timing and our decisions, and this feeling of, well, it's a flow, another flow state, I think, that's the way I feel about it. What's going to have the biggest energy impact for myself, my business, and the world at this moment? And rather than trying to push production, all with these logical, rational strategies and thoughts, and which make you feel crazy and make you
Yeah.
feel your time is not your own. When you take that step back of what feels good, what feels strong, what feels powerful, what
Mm.
what in that energy you can trust.
Mm.
People respond to that. Your clients, your
Yeah.
customers, your business responds to that. And I think that is, it's like when we are the CEOs of our own business, whether that's being a healer, just a one-on-one, even if we don't have lots of other employees and it's not that complex, or whether it's a very complex business. And one of the most important jobs or functions or opportunities of the CEO is being in that energy state, which is dropped into deep time. It's
Mm.
frequency. And that frequency transmits, and that
Mhm.
frequency is powerful, and that frequency moves the earth and the world. That's not a practical, tangible thing. It is an energy state.
Mhm.
And so I would invite everyone listening, and always have to invite myself into the same space. I'm obviously have the same sense of pressures that everyone has, but yeah, that reminder to come back into that organic time that is actually a very strong manifesting power.
Mhm. Mhm. So what I'm hearing is the invitation in coming back into what feels powerful, what feels impactful, what feels aligned, and that often means what feels a little bit scary and edgy, but
Yeah.
will serve and make us grow.
Yes, exactly. And the more you do this, the more you practice, the faster it gets, the easier it gets.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's like a muscle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so, so much, Azra, for all your wisdom, all these insights, and this super interesting podcast that we've co created and all these answers that you brought. So, we're going to share your website, your Instagram account in the details of this podcast so people can find you. When is your next event? I'm guessing you're doing something for the summer solstice in June.
Yes, yes. So I have a few things happening. I have the start of my 1 year biomancy diploma, 1 year apprenticeship. It's an eco-shamanic apprenticeship into earth, into cycles of time, into body, into that begins May 1st.
Okay.
And I have something beginning in, well, yes, it summer solstice. So I have every solstice and equinox, I do free events and ceremonies. And so summer solstice and after that equinox, etc.
Beautiful. Well, we'll make sure to broadcast this episode before May 1st so people can join. And then when are you doing the next biomancy cohort?
So the one after the year-long program begins every May. So it's just, it just happens. It starts on May 1st every year.
Okay.
And I'll be doing an ecosomatics retreat in August where I live in the mountains of North Carolina in the US, and an online ecosomatics practitioner training. Ecosomatics is understanding how to work with our body, our soma, to heal, to evolve, to awaken in connection with deep ecology outside of us and in our own DNA. And so that's another
Mm,
exciting program that I'm
beautiful. Well,
sharing.
you can send me the link. So we'll put all of that in the show notes of this episode. Thank you so, so much, Azra, for everything. And I will see you soon.
Thank you, Ali.